Not always does the truth come to light the way we expect. Sometimes it explodes in our face, forcing us to see what we've tried to ignore. What would you do if you discovered that the person you trusted most was hiding a dark secret? Daniel believed he had a solid marriage and unshakable love until the signs started to appear. Small details that at first seemed like coincidences. A deleted message here, a flimsy excuse there. But when reality knocked on the door, it was devastating. An infidelity story might seem like something from a movie, but for him, it was a real nightmare. Infidelity isn't just about lies. It's about the destruction of what was once true. When Daniel realized Mariana was leading a double life, it was as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. How could someone who slept beside him every night be capable of hiding something so cruel? The worst part wasn't just the discovery, but everything that followed. The cold justifications, the desperate attempt to keep up appearances, the psychological game that made him question his own sanity. True infidelity stories aren't just about betrayal, they're about the emotional wreckage they leave behind. But what truly destroys a betrayed person isn't the infidelity itself, it's the doubt. How to move forward after such a betrayal? Is it possible to overcome, rebuild trust, and start again without carrying this pain forever? Daniel found his own answers, but the journey wasn't easy. And now you're about to learn this whole story, a tale of betrayal, loss, and, above all, starting over. If you're curious to know how Daniel rose after this tragedy, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear the story. Together, we can learn how to overcome even life's greatest challenges. Daniel had always believed he'd found the kind of love that only exists in the movies. He and Mariana were the couple everyone admired, shared laughs, romantic dinners, and a partnership that seemed unbreakable. But perfection is often just a well-rehearsed illusion. Small signs started to appear. Mariana began hiding her phone, quickly turning the screen off, and suddenly, unavoidable commitments took up her nights. Daniel's mind tried to ignore it, but his heart was already beginning to suspect. The change was subtle, almost imperceptible, but those who pay attention to human behavior know that betrayals rarely happen out of nowhere. Mariana started dressing up more, smiling at nothing as if she was living a parallel story. Her touch grew cold. Conversations were replaced by uncomfortable silences. And it wasn't just that. Friends noticed the distance, but no one dared to comment. Daniel tried to rationalize it. It's just stress, routine, just in my head, but once doubt is planted, it grows like a weed. What seemed like an insignificant detail soon became impossible to ignore. Deleted messages, calls answered out of sight, increasingly flimsy excuses. Mariana, who once called him my love so naturally, now seemed lost in another reality. Trust, that invisible pillar that sustains any relationship, started to crumble. Daniel didn't know yet, but he was about to discover what many call a true infidelity story. And the first warning bell had already rung. That night seemed normal until Mariana's phone buzzed on the table. An unknown number flashed on the screen, but what really caught Daniel's attention was the way she reacted. In a quick, almost rehearsed movement, she turned the phone face down and forced a smile. "Nothing important," she said, with a tone that was far too light to be natural. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest, but tried to convince himself it was just paranoia. However, something inside him knew. Infidelity stories often begin with an ignored intuition. The following days brought new, unsettling details. Mariana started taking her phone into the bathroom, kept it on silent, and always found an excuse to avoid Daniel touching it. Small changes might seem irrelevant individually, but together, they form a pattern that's impossible to ignore. In a healthy relationship, transparency shouldn't be a problem. But here, the truth seemed hidden behind screen locks and evasive answers. It was a dangerous game, and Daniel felt he was losing. The nervousness that once meant love now meant fear. He tried to deceive himself, telling himself that he was overreacting, that he shouldn't think like those Reddit cheating stories full of suspicions and twists. But Mariana's coldness, the growing distance between them, and the uncomfortable feeling that she wasn't really there, all of that painted a picture he didn't want to see. The first warning bell had been sounded, and now, doubt grew with each passing day. The weight of doubt no longer fit inside Daniel. Every night beside Mariana felt like a poorly rehearsed play, a script where only he didn't know the ending. Determined to end that anguish, he took drastic action. He hired a private investigator. At first, he felt guilty. This is something paranoid people do, he thought. But the truth, that cruel enemy of the betrayed, soon revealed that his suspicions were more than justified. The report he received a few days later was like a punch in the stomach, a real infidelity story, written with photographic evidence and messages that left no room for doubt. It wasn't just a fleeting affair, a thoughtless mistake. Mariana had built a parallel life, full of secret meetings and sophisticated lies. Dinners that never happened, work meetings that ended in hotel rooms, messages exchanged in the middle of the night with the kind of intimacy Daniel thought was exclusive to them. He remembered all the nights he trusted blindly, every hug that now seemed like a disguised betrayal. It wasn't just infidelity, it was a complete farce. A true story of betrayal that he never imagined starring in. The pain was immediate, but the shock kept him paralyzed. He felt anger, disgust, sadness, a whirlwind of emotions that seemed to want to tear him apart inside. The man with Mariana wasn't just a stranger. He was living proof that the trust he had blindly placed in her had been thrown away. Now, there was no room for doubts or assumptions. He had two choices: pretend he didn't know anything or face the truth and demand answers. Deep down, Daniel already knew the confrontation was inevitable. The silence weighed heavily in the room as Mariana looked at Daniel, trying to decipher what he knew. He held the evidence in his hands, his eyes burning with indignation, but his voice came out controlled, cold, almost cutting. "Who is he?" he asked bluntly. Mariana blinked quickly, surprised. She denied it, tried to deflect, but Daniel was no longer the naive husband he once was. With each piece of evidence placed before her, the mask began to fall. First hesitation, then denial, until finally, a defeated sigh. The game was over. She could no longer pretend. The justifications came like an uncontrolled flood. She said she felt lonely, that the routine had killed the passion, that she hadn't planned anything. It just happened. She blamed time, monotony, and the lack of excitement. But Daniel saw beyond the words. All of it was a reflection of her selfishness, not a momentary mistake. Infidelity and betrayal stories follow a pattern. There's always an excuse. There's always an attempt to soften the blame. But nothing could erase the fact that she had chosen to betray, lie, and deceive for so long. What Mariana didn't expect was that Daniel wouldn't beg, wouldn't shout, nor would he engage in a blame game. He simply looked at her, letting the silence do its job. Because the betrayal wasn't just in the hidden meetings or deleted messages. It was in the conscious choice to live a double life, without thinking of the consequences. Love may forgive, but respect, once broken, is rarely rebuilt. Now, only one decision remained: to continue living amidst lies or take the path to freedom. Daniel and Mariana's marriage didn't end in a scream or a soap opera scene. It ended in the deafening silence of someone who has already understood there's nothing left to say. The divorce was inevitable, but not without battles. Mariana tried to justify herself, asked for second chances, used their memories against him. But Daniel knew that trust, once destroyed, can't be patched up like a broken vase. And so began a new war, the legal one, where every detail of the past turned into an argument in court. Infidelity stories may start in secrecy, but they always end up in plain view. The fight wasn't just against Mariana, but against the ghosts that haunted him. The lonely nights, the moments of doubt, the memories that kept resurfacing in weak moments. Infidelity doesn't just destroy a relationship, it corrodes self-esteem, alters the perception of reality, makes a person question every choice they've made. But Daniel understood that sinking into pain would give more power to the betrayal than it deserved. The best revenge isn't hatred, but reconstruction. And that's exactly what he chose to do. Slowly, he began to take control of his life again. He discovered that solitude could be fertile ground for growth, that starting over isn't a sign of failure, but of courage. He signed up for the gym, started hanging out with friends again, invested in courses and projects he had always postponed. Life, which once revolved around a destroyed marriage, was his again. Overcoming didn't happen overnight, but with each small victory, he proved to himself that Mariana's infidelity would not define his story. The past might have been a true infidelity story, but the future? That was his to write. After the storm, Daniel realized life didn't end there. On the contrary, that was the beginning of something bigger. At first, starting over seemed impossible. He saw himself trapped in memories, in the what-ifs that kept haunting him. But he knew the only way out was to move forward. And that's what he did. He dedicated himself to rediscover who he was outside of marriage, to rebuild his identity without carrying the label of betrayed husband. Infidelity stories may mark a life, but they should never define it. He decided he wouldn't just be a supporting character in his own story. The journey wasn't magical or linear. There were days of relapse, moments when resentment spoke louder. But he learned that healing doesn't come from a single decision, but from many small daily choices. He chose to surround himself with people who truly cared. He chose to focus on the present instead of reliving the past. He chose to look ahead with hope instead of sinking into hurts. And, without realizing it, he was becoming someone stronger, wiser, someone who not only survived a cheating story, but emerged from it with a new outlook on life. It was through this process that Daniel found new love. Not a replacement for Mariana, but someone who made him realize that true affection doesn't need secrets, lies, or weak excuses. He realized that trusting again wasn't about forgetting the past, but learning from it. Life, after all, is a constant rebirth. And now, he wasn't just moving forward, he was reborn. Because, in the end, true overcoming isn't about no longer feeling pain, but about choosing, every day, not to let it define who you are. After everything Daniel went through, the question remains, what would you do if you were in his place? Betrayal is painful, yes, but it's the way you choose to move forward that truly defines who you are. Don't get lost in the maze of pain. Use every lesson, every step, as an opportunity for transformation. Overcoming is within your reach, and the first step begins with a choice. What will yours be? Have you been through something similar? How did you deal with the betrayal and the pain of disappointment? Share with us in the comments. If this story touched you in any way, don't forget to like and share with someone you know who also needs to hear this message. Don't miss the next stories. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue learning how to overcome life's greatest challenges. Together, we can write new stories of strength and renewal.